unless you're speaking, because that helps the quality of the signal for people who are struggling a bit. Could I also remind you to type speak into the chat function if you wish to speak, or use the raise your hand function if you would like to contribute also. Also, if you have used the raise your hand function, please lower your hand again once you finish speaking, because I notice in some meetings hands remain raised, and it can be a bit confusing as to whether somebody actually wishes to contribute or not. Kirsty will be assisting me to ensure I get to everyone, but if all else fails, put your camera on and wave and somebody will pick you up. I need to leave by 12:30 to take part in a Borderlands Growth Deal partnership meeting. Hopefully we will be finished by then, but if not, Nick Morris as Vice Chair has agreed to chair the remainder of the meeting. Nick is actually not with us at the beginning of the meeting. He is obliged to attend a meeting regarding the outbreak in Dumfries, but he thinks he will be with us by about 11 o'clock. Liz, could I ask you to give us the position about attendance? I think the vast majority of members are attending online this morning, but Liz will clarify that for us.
That's correct. Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you said, Nick Morris, the Vice Chair, is just going to be a little late in joining us at 11 o'clock. We have an apology from Councillor Ian Carruthers, no substitute. We have an apology from Maureen Dowden with Jane Moore as her substitute. Apology from Councillor Andy Ferguson, no substitute. Apology from Nick Halfhide, no substitute. An apology from Linda Jones with Mark Hollis here as her representative, and an apology from Gavin Stevenson with Derek Crichton as his representative. And in the meeting room here at the bridge, there's myself, Liz Manson, Kirsty Peden and Councillor Andrew Wood. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Our first item this morning is the draft minute of our last meeting for approval. I will take silence as agreement and ask whether or not the minute is approved. As I do not see any wish to speak, I assume that those are approved. And can I ask whether anyone has any comments or queries arising from the minutes of the last meeting? I don't see anybody indicating a wish to speak. Therefore, we will proceed to item 2, which is the business briefing update. And this is the usual progress report about various operational issues. And do members have any comments or queries about any of the 3 issues? And Liz will deal them with those for us if you have anything. This is going smoothly. So the recommendations are to note the position of the board membership and the Public Health Scotland Strategic Plan response, and agree the changes to the membership of the Tackling Poverty Coordination Group. Are we content to do so? Aye. Helen Curran wishes to speak. Helen.
I think you're still muted, Helen.
Sorry, schoolboy error. Helen Curran, Chair of Third Sector Dumfries and Galloway. Just in reference to the section on the third sector representative, we've had a few issues, I think, in common with a lot of organisations. We've had some end of terms of board members coming up in lockdown, so we're very low on board members at the moment. We've got a plan to address that at our AGM on the 26th of November, and certainly I want to have our second representative nominated and agreed for the next meeting. We won't make the next one, which is the 13th of November, but hopefully I assume we're having a CPP in January, and we should have our second representative by then.
Thanks for the update on that, Helen. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else, I don't think. Well, I've got one on there. No, that was Helen. Yeah, Helen, could you take your hand down now? Thanks. Just to avoid me getting confused. Thank you. If we proceed now to item 3, which is the current key strategic issues, this is the usual update on the plans and strategies that contribute to the Local Outcomes Improvement Plan. And as usual, I will go through them in order to allow members the opportunity to comment or ask questions. Other than the Children's Services Plan, officers are not actually present at the meeting. The officers who wrote the reports are not actually at the meeting, so therefore comments will be recorded and will be fed back to the lead officer if members have particular issues you want to raise with them. First item is the anti-poverty strategy, and I'd like to draw members' attention to 1.4, which is the review of the current strategy and determining the next approach. This could be another council strategy, it could be a community partnership strategy, or it could be a commission or advisory group. It's important, obviously, that we reflect on the last 5 years and the demands of the coming years, particularly as we are still in the grip of COVID and looking at restart and recovery. And there will be a lot more people who are affected by poverty as a result of the events of the last 6 months. Partners will have an opportunity to contribute during the coming months, but any preliminary thoughts or views today will be welcome. So I'll invite members to make any comments.
Perhaps, Chair, if I could just come in. Councillor Ferguson has said, although he's not able to be with us today, he'd asked me just to flag up in terms of this item that there's quite a significant number of engagement sessions are taking place across the region, particularly with third sector organisations this month, and helpfully using the Third Sector Poverty Forum, which is supported by Third Sector Dumfries and Galloway. And these sessions are being supported by the partner organisation who's helping the council with this work. And really they're looking, as you said, about how has the last 5 years gone, what has been the benefit of the strategy, the impact of COVID, and what we would like to do going forward. So Councillor Ferguson, wearing his council hat, has asked just to be assured that anyone who wants to contribute to this work over the coming months will have an opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. I'm not seeing anybody else wanting to contribute to this item, but I'm sure Councillor Ferguson and others and the other members of the working group will be very happy to hear any views that you wish to put forward, or indeed to see you at the engagement events which are coming up. We can move on now to the Children's Services Plan. This is a significant stage in this Children's Services Plan, as it has now been agreed. Jo Cochrane is here, so I'd like to start by asking Jo if there's anything she wants to bring our attention to before we take comments and queries. Jo.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything I really need to draw your attention to. Our plan has gone to Scottish Government, but as you'll be aware, it's a high-level plan. Work has started to put the detail into the detailed plans that will sit beneath that. And I think that we are lucky enough to have a plan with priorities that are sufficiently wide that will be enable us to respond to the changing circumstances of children consequent to COVID. So nothing further really to add.
Thanks, Jo. Can I invite any questions or comments from members, please? No. Everybody's content with the plan. Thanks very much, Jo.
Okay. Thank you.
Next item up is the Local Child Poverty Action Report, which we covered in detail at our last meeting. It's good to see that the statutory partners have now agreed it and the IJB has endorsed it, but I'd invite any further comments or queries which we will feed back to Gillian Brydson. I'm not seeing anything on the item either. Sorry. Sorry, I thought I heard somebody saying something there. Okay, not got any hands up or indications of wishes to speak. And can we now then move on to the Community Justice Improvement Plan, of which there was a copy, I believe, with our report. And again, if members have any comments or queries, we will feed those back to Vicky Binney. Okay, I'm not seeing anything there either. Moving on to the CLD Partner Strategic Plan. The work that partners are undertaking during the COVID pandemic is exceptional, and as this is Adult Learners Week, it is appropriate to highlight the inspiring stories of learners and volunteers that are being shared on Twitter. Any comments or queries which they wished us to transfer back to Steve and Jack? Good, thanks. If we can go now to the Health and Social Care Plan. Understandably, there has been a delay in the annual performance report, and so we will receive this report at our next meeting in November. But before that, do members have any comments or queries? Okay. Nobody indicating. We move on to the Local Development Plan, where members will note at 7.2.4 that the work is being done with Scottish Borders Council around the Local Development Plan, and that it complements work being done on economic planning. Any comments or queries to go back to Shona McCoy? Jane Maitland.
I'm really sorry. I got rather late and I wanted to mention something about the Health and Social Care Strategic Plan. I just want to emphasise how important it is that we get the information sharing processes actually completed. Now we are, I think, probably fair to say 65% of the way there between data sharing between the health and social care partnerships, particularly through social work and health. And I would really like to emphasise that the foot should not be taken off the pedal. So, we are a community planning partnership. I think we recognise the value of true collaboration, and I would like to put down a marker that I want to see this continue. So if I could possibly maybe emphasise that surely through what we've been doing with respect to our COVID work and what we have been discovering, where we maybe have not had information flowing properly between the partners, the worst case scenario could be that some damage occurs to people. And I'm presuming that there will be some sort of review and update post-COVID to check that we were successful in what we did. Let's have the tools to do the work properly. And yes, I'll leave it there. That's where I think probably I just want to put that marker down, because it's not complete yet.
Thanks, Jane. That can be transmitted back to Julie White, I think, is getting the comments on this. I'm actually having a problem now in seeing the chat function. I'm not quite sure why.
Chair,
yeah, there it is. I've also got Norma Hart, and I think maybe Norma's wanting to comment on the Local Development Plan. Norma.
Yes, Elaine, thank you. And you're right, I did want to ask a question actually in relation to the Local Development Plan. I've just left the first meeting, my induction meeting with the Regional Economic Partnership, and I did have a question coming from that meeting and relating, I think, to this document. How does the Regional Economic Partnership and our own community planning partnership structure work together? Now, I'm not expecting necessarily an answer right now, Elaine. It's probably quite a complex. It is a complex landscape, but I think it's a question worth asking and maybe coming back to at a future meeting.
Yeah, I'm happy to pick that up. Members will recall that we have had discussions over the last couple of years about how our existing economic leadership group, which is just for Dumfries and Galloway, and was one of the reporting groups to this CPP board, what happens in the longer term now that we have a South of Scotland regional economic partnership. And I think it also ties into the regional economic strategy, which is at item 9 in this particular report, because clearly the landscape has changed and the reporting arrangements to this board need to reflect that. So without preempting what might happen, I think clearly the Dumfries and Galloway Regional Economic Strategy and the Dumfries and Galloway Economic Leadership Group are now part of that wider South of Scotland partnership, and we will reflect that in due course in our arrangements. Thank you.
Thanks. Russell and Councillor Davidson Russell Briggs and Councillor Davidson have indicated they want to speak on this issue as well. Russell.
Thanks, Chair. No, it was just perhaps to help the conversation, the question that Norma asked, is I was at this equivalent meeting for Borders yesterday, and they have agreed to close down, but to stand down the equivalent of your leadership enterprise committee and just meld it into the RAP. So they've taken that committee away, if that's the easiest way of putting it, Chair.
Thanks. Obviously, that was a discussion in terms of Dumfries and Galloway. That would be a discussion which would have to be had with the council. I don't think we have any proposals at the moment to stand down any of our committees. I'll bring Councillor Davidson in.
Thanks, Elaine. Good morning. So, considering the point about how these things interrelate, I think is really important. The big job that the Regional Economic Partnership has to get into pretty quickly is, of course, the Regional Economic Strategy. I wonder whether, therefore, and I think obviously the rep will have to consider this next week, if I remember rightly, but clearly we'll want to engage on the development of that strategy. It has to be done on the basis of wider engagement than the membership of the rep. I think in order for it to be properly representative and effective. So perhaps there might be a useful opportunity there when we're doing that process of consultation and engagement. Maybe for the rep to use bodies such as this as part of that process. To an extent, I'll admit this is very much thinking out loud, and I think it has to be duly considered by the rep, first and foremost. But it would strike me as being perhaps a useful starting point to making sure that those kind of linkages are there, and it also has the benefit of being task focused. I think it's always easier to engage on a draft proposal in front of you, for example. Than it necessarily is to engage on the abstracts of the issue. As I say, just an idea that occurs to me. I think we'd have to talk it through, but it might be a good starting point. Thanks, Elaine.
Thanks, Rob. Any further contributions on this? I think we're to a certain extent streaming regional economic strategy part, so we might want to pick some more of the points up at that. I don't think there's anything further on the local development plan as such. We can move on to local housing strategy. Members will be pleased to see in 8.4 that awards have been made from the Town Centre Living Fund of £1 million, and the meeting of the Economy and Resources Committee, which is chaired by Councillor Davidson, will meet next week to consider the details. But prior to that, do members have any comments or queries? Not seeing anything there. So if we can move on to the regional. Okay, somebody's spoken. Somebody wanting to speak. Don't see anyone. Maybe just some interference or something. Okay. If we move on to the regional economic strategy, there may be more points that people wish to pick up now. I'm delighted to read, and in fact I know from my membership of the Regional Economic Strategy that the wider membership of the South of Scotland Economic Partnership has been progressed, and Norma has just referred to the induction programme that she's taken part in. And as we discussed at our last meeting, third and private sector representation is key to an integrated economic recovery. Do we have any further comments or queries on this? And obviously we've had some discussion in connection with the local development plan, but there may be further points that people want to raise and that we can then feed back to Juliet Cook. Seeing anything, either in terms of hands. Screen has changed again. I wish it would stop doing that.
Elaine, yes, I've asked to speak. I don't think you can see the chat thing, I'm afraid.
I think we've possibly lost the chair temporarily. So perhaps Councillor Maitland, if you would like to go ahead, and then Norma has her hand up too.
Thank you very much, Liz. Liz, it was just 9.2. I think everybody is interested in the greening of our economy in the light of COVID, and I just wondered whether there had been any further progress with the college in that partnership bid. Do you have any information?
I don't at the moment, but unless maybe Hugh Carr has got some up-to-date information, has been involved in that.
Can you just repeat the comment, please?
Yes, certainly. It's paragraph 9.2, the carbon negative economy. And there is mention here in a partnership bid being submitted by the college, the Economic Leadership Group, and indeed the council, towards becoming a carbon negative region. And I just wondered where that had got to.
I must admit I don't have that exactly to hand, but I'll take it back and somebody will feed that back through the chair.
Thanks.
Chair, can I just check, can you see the chat function? Norma Hart is looking to come in, and also Professor Griggs.
I've had to go onto a different device. I was booted off on that device, so I'm now on a different device where it's more difficult to see the chat function. But I do see Norma and Russell have their hands up. I'm not sure who had their hand up first.
Norman.
Okay, I'll bring Norma in.
Okay, thanks, Russell. I suppose I want to go back to my earlier point about the relationship between the Regional Economic Partnership and the Community Planning Partnership Board and our whole structure here, because and I don't feel like we've quite bottomed out the discussion earlier. So I'm really just asking for a commitment to coming back to this, possibly at the next Community Planning Partnership Board meeting in November, once the Regional Economic Partnership has had its first meeting next week, to clarify what the relationship will be.
Okay. Russell, do you want to answer?
No, I was actually going to help Hugh with his comment on the question that had been asked about the joint bid that had gone in. Hugh, purely coincidentally, I was talking about that with Joanna yesterday. The bid is out there, but it relies on us putting some money in as well. So I think, which we weren't aware of, So we are having another look at it, if I can put it that way.
Okay. Thanks.
And I'm certainly happy to put the relationship between the CPP board and the South of Scotland structure and the Dumfries and Galloway structure in place. And I think just following on from Professor Grigg's comment, I think that the discussion that this board had a year or so ago was about that very point. Do we still need Dumfries and Galloway strategy and a Dumfries and Galloway economic grouping, as well as a South of Scotland grouping? And the discussion was about whether or not we needed to be, very clear about what our demands and what our asks were for economic issues in the context of South of Scotland, or indeed if that broader structure was sufficient for our needs. And it was felt that it would allow the South of Scotland structures to sort of time to bed in and get established, I think, before any decision was made about refreshing or continuing the Dumfries and Galloway structures. So happy, I'm sure, to work with colleagues for a report to come to a future meeting. Thank you.
You've got Councillor Davidson.
Thanks, Elaine. Yes, I'd welcome that. I think it will be important to have that discussion. I mean, this is a transitional period, and it's one that I think has probably ended up being a little bit out of sync with where it would otherwise have been for obvious reasons. And there is a lot of sort of rushing to catch up, I think it would be fair to say. So I think getting a look at that, particularly once we've got the rep up and running, would be beneficial. I'd certainly support.
Thanks for that. I think I may have missed some of the conversation, but it sounds that a sensible direction of travel. Any further comment? I see somebody now. There's something in the chat here. Let me look. See. Unfortunately, on this device, I have to.
No further requests to speak, Chair.
Nobody else wanted to speak. Great. Okay. And I think. And the final one is the regional transport bit of interference. Okay. As this update says, forecasting travel demand is even more uncertain now. And we know that there's been a drop in demand of 10.6. It's only 10% during lockdown, though obviously demand is increasing again since. Do members have any comments or queries that they wish to feed back to Douglas Kirkpatrick? Give people a minute to get their hands up. Or
Chair, Councillor Wood's going to come in.
Councillor Wood.
All right, thank you, Chair. It was really just to give you an update that we had a meeting with the Transport Minister, and in that meeting he made it quite clear, and rightly so, that in actual fact there will be no further monies forthcoming in the foreseeable future. I think that both governments have really tried their level best to keep the networks going as best they can, but the reality is the cost and expenditure that's being put into keeping public transport going is unsustainable in its present form.
That sounds a slightly grim prognosis, but hopefully there's some thought about if public transport is not sustainable in its current form, how we need to develop public transport in order to make it sustainable and also responsive, particularly in rural areas like ours.
Yes, and Elaine, we totally agree with you in that respect, and we are very keen to look at how Dumfries and Galloway can develop its own network and public transport systems. We have to look at how we can bring it in-house. That's the reality. In fairness, at present, the commercial services providers that we have been extremely good and are working very much with us at present, but how long that's going to continue under the present climate, we're not sure.
Chair, Councillor Maitland's looking to speak.
Yeah, Councillor Maitland.
Thank you very much, Elaine. It's really a question, and I'm not certain if anybody can answer this. In 10.3, TP04, which is about improving journey quality across the road, public transport and active travel networks, can I ask how involved is the Regional Transport Partnership involved in proposing to assist in 20-mile-an-hour limits, to assist people to feel confident about using active travel, walking and cycling in our towns when it's possible to do?
I know there's certainly been a website where members of the public have been encouraged to contribute to where they believe that improvements need to be made to our networks to enable active travel. And I know I think that Swesttrans has been involved in looking at that, but possibly Councillor Wood might be in a better place to advise on what sort of discussion they've had.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, during the meeting that we had with the Transport Minister, we did highlight the fact that we are keen to support active travel, and we would like to see, we want to see a reduction in the standards that are required by Sustrans in supporting path networks throughout our communities. We are very keen to try and link our communities through this system of having a network of paths that can be used both by walkers and cyclists. But at present, the standards required to put those path networks in place run into millions of pounds. And we don't believe that at this stage we need to have them quite to such a high standard. If we get the network in place to a lower standard, we get far more mileage out of it, and we could upgrade it at a later stage. But at least we would have far more in the way of connecting communities. That's the sort of direction of conversation that we had, and indeed the Minister took that on board, and he's going to go away and have discussions with Sustrans and various other likes of Transport Scotland to see if that is a possibility.
Thanks, Councillor Wood. I think also on the issue of the 20-mile-an-hour zones, that we had our first workshop in with regard to the roads review, and as Councillor Maitland is well aware, that was raised there. So I think there is something that we need to do as a council, because a lot of it in terms of reducing speed limits on our urban roads and so on, actually that's our responsibility as a council. And it's something that we probably need to look at. Well, I happen to believe that we need to look at. Maybe everybody wouldn't necessarily be in agreement, but I think it is something that we should be looking at. And as I say, it came up as part of the roads review workshop last week. Norma, you've got your hand up. Do you want to contribute?
Yes, thanks, Elaine. I just wanted to remind the board about the role of community transport in transport provision across the region. And in fact, I think in another item on the agenda, when we're going to be talking about recovery planning, one of the recommended actions will be around community transport and the creation of a community transport hub, which will look at coordinating the various forms of community transport and third sector organisations that are involved at the moment and potentially could be involved in supporting transport of people around the region.
I'm glad you said that. I think it is an important function, and particularly if we're, there's this realisation that the current public transport systems are not sustainable. Obviously, solutions like community transport are going to be very important. And I'm glad that as part of the COVID response, that money was found to help to support the development of community transport. I think that was very important. Thanks for that. Anything further on the regional transport strategy? Okay. If we can move on to item 4, which is the COVID-19 recovery and renewal. This is a short report, but it's significant in its ambition and importance. We agreed at our last meeting that the role of this report would be around recovery and renewal, though it is looking increasingly likely that we will also have to deal with a resurgence in the virus at a time of year when other health and weather-related issues are also impacting, as indeed by the end of the year will Brexit. This is an initial joint plan for comment and input, and also a proposal that there is an officer group established to drive this work forward. We have Lee Seaton, I see him, and I believe we have Mark Thompson present as well to answer questions. Lee, do you want to say something before we go into members' questions?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just a few additional comments. As members will be aware, the LRP is continuing to have a focus on our response to COVID, but there is a strong commitment to recovery. And in addition to the ongoing response, a short-term LRP recovery group was established, comprising representatives from each of the partners, just to explore where recovery actions that each partner would aim to achieve as we come out of the pandemic could perhaps be taken forward on a joint basis, building on learning from what has happened to date and what the ambitions will be moving forward. So attached today is an early iteration of an action plan which is drawn from the conversations I had with those individual partners that sat on the LRP recovery group. The ask of the board today is to agree to set up a longer-term group, a COVID recovery group comprising a range of partners to develop the action plan and sub-actions. There's a suggested aims and remit of the group within the paper. Would highlight within the action plan there are 4 shaded areas and 4 actions. Those shaded actions are as a result of conversations that Richard Grieveson and I had with subsector D&G representatives, and Norma earlier on referred to community transport, which is one of those 4 shaded areas in terms of those being priority areas that this group would look at. However, in addition, there are a number of other actions that have came out that are detailed in the plan. And we have some ongoing discussions with our health partners in terms of how we could feed into the Health and Social Care Partnership and explore any governance of reporting opportunities for areas that fit that area particularly well. For example, single access to services, joint work between public health and leisure and wellbeing, for example. So the ask today, Chair, is to consider the report, look at the establishment of a longer-term recovery group, the endorsement of working towards a more detailed plan, and how that could feed into this particular board moving forward. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Russell Griggs.
Yeah, it's a point of clarification, Elaine, and how this fits again with the Regional Economic Partnership. I'm sorry. The guidance we've received so far from the Scottish Government, and I presume you have, and I'll just read it. It says the Scottish Government wants regional economic partnerships to play a strong role in leading regional economic recovery and renewal. I will ask each regional economic partnership to deliver an action plan for doing so. We will help, this is the Scottish Government, we will help each REP convene national and local economic actors, members of the REP and others to take a focused task force approach to this work. We will look to private sector partners to play strong leadership roles in identifying and prioritising regional strengths and driving forward collaborative action that exploits opportunities, including increasing investment from within and beyond the region. So it's a point of clarification, Elaine, on how that fits with the new group, please.
Yes, the new group will be looking at more than just economic recovery, but I'll ask either Mark or Lee if they can clarify that point about the interface between the regional economic partnership and this group.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll maybe come in and answer that. And the point is very well made. Economic recovery as a significant strand of recovering from COVID-19. That work within the council, a lot of that work has been taken forward by an economic recovery cell led by Steve Rogers, and they are working closely with wider partnership as well. But as part of this overall programme, it will be important to make sure all these strands are interwoven and not working at cross purposes. So absolutely, it's something that we can make sure happens going forward, as described by the comments earlier.
Russell, Russell, do you want to come back on that?
No, I'm fine with that. I guess it goes back to the point Norma was raising. We just have to be sure as we move into this new world of regionalisation that we figure out how to do it as well. And Rob's point he made earlier that we're probably a little out of sync in terms of COVID and how we do this. So as long as we're all aware of it, then the objective, Elaine, is not to trip over each other. And I think we're meeting enough to make sure that doesn't happen.
Of course, and I think actually one of our strengths as a relatively small region is that it is sometimes the same individuals who are taking part in these different groups. So I understand that Norma, for example, is a prospective chair, and she sits on the Regional Economic Partnership, and there will be others who contribute to both and who will be able to help to keep us aligned, if you like, and make sure that we're not going off in different directions from different groups. Norma, did you want to contribute anything as a prospective chair of this group?
Well, just listening to the exchange there, I mean, it's important that we're all clear on how all these various groups are what they're doing and where they fit with one another and what their relationships are with one another in terms of authority and decision making and accountability. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that, but I think the point's been made both by me and Russell that we need to keep a weather eye on this. I see Helen wants to come in as well.
I see there's a hand, Helen.
Yes, I was just to add, I know Norma's excited and pleased to have been asked to chair this group, but I guess as her chair, we just need to be, the action plan is huge and it covers so many things, and we just need to be sure that it's resourced appropriately to deliver the outcomes that this group is asking for. I know there was reference to executive support from 8 people, but it looked like they were sort of part-time. So I just want everybody to be really clear about what's realistic for Third Sector Dumfries and Galloway to deliver with our current resourcing structure.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, point well made. I've got Derek Crichton.
Thank you, Elaine. Just to reaffirm that that the points are very well made, that we've got a cluttered landscape, we've got significant challenges to face, and put simply, we can only do that in a coordinated and cohesive way, and therefore we certainly need to ensure that we have clarity of role, of function, but fundamentally we also need to ensure that this group drives forward both the economic and social recovery for our region, and I'm sure we'd all want to ensure that's the focus, whilst making sure that we avoid duplication and overlap of very pressured resources at this present time. And finally, Elaine, just to acknowledge that we certainly recognise that while we talk about recovery, we are certainly still in response mode as well, and therefore we are all very conscious of that at the present time. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek. Yes, I think some of the reimposition of various restrictions reminds us that, in fact, we're not actually out of the response. We're looking at recovery and restarting, but at the same time we're still in the response phase. So that can be an added added complications because things can change extremely quickly. I see, Helen, you've got your hand up. Were you wanting to come back in? No, that's fine. Anybody else on the recovery plan? I'm not seeing anybody. Okay, so are we prepared to agree to the development of the Dumfries and Galloway Community Planning Partnership COVID Recovery Plan, which will be based on the LRP recovery plan as set out in the appendix? Do we agree with that? Then I'll take silence as being assent. I'm not seeing anybody saying anything differently. And we have to agree that the Dumfries and Galloway CPP COVID recovery plan be added to the list of key strategies and plans that can contribute to the ROI as set out in paragraph 6. So we would have regular updates on the progress at each of our meetings. Agree with that? And are we agreed with the establishment of the recovery group as set out in paragraphs 7 to 10? Obviously bearing in mind the need to ensure that the different groups are working in close alignment and not at cross purposes and unaware of the actions of other groups. Okay, great, thanks very much. Item 5 is community planning locality arrangements. We have had our locality arrangements on our work programme for some time, and the new locality hubs have presented us with the opportunity to resolve the position in a very positive way. Do members have any comments or thoughts on locality arrangements, perhaps from the perspective of their own organisations, arrangements, or how they, as an organisation, wish to contribute? And Liz will answer any comments or queries on this. Can I invite any questions from members, please? Helen?
Hi, yeah, just to say that it strikes me that if we can make this work in a really effective way, capitalising on everything that's happened over the last 6 months, this sort of small silver lining, then that will serve to speak to the discussions about whether we can work at a South of Scotland wide level or a Dumfries and Galloway wide level. If you're really effective at reaching into your communities and understanding the needs through this model, then perhaps we can go to a South of Scotland level. And get the benefits of going wide if we know we've got that detailed knowledge of our communities and their needs through this model. So hopefully it'll lead to bigger things.
Indeed, you make a good point. There are certain advantages that come out. It's been a very difficult 6 months for everybody, but there are some lessons that we've learned from that, which I think we will benefit from later on. Norma.
Thanks, Elaine. And yes, I just wanted to confirm and our enthusiasm for these locality hubs and our commitment to them as a very positive result of COVID-19 partnership working. And just to mention in passing that I believe Scottish Borders Council is moving towards something similar called area partnerships, but it would allow for a coordinated approach to community empowerment, community development work across the south of Scotland, with both areas doing something very similar.
Yes, that's an interesting development. It would be very useful that we're working in the same sort of way right across the south of Scotland. I'm sure that will be good, welcome news to the New Enterprise Agency and the Regional Economic Partnership to see that happening. Any further contributions? Let's check. Got somebody here. No, I see. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else wishing to speak. I know Nick has joined us now. Hi. If we have no further comments on that, we've been asked to agree that the local rural partnerships are replaced by locality hubs, with the additional remit, membership and operating arrangements as set out and a review brought to the board in March next year. And we're to agree to provide direction and guidance to the development of the locality hubs. So presumably that will be an agenda item in future meetings as these develop. Okay, thanks very much. Item 6 is our forward plan. The proposal here is for us to try something different for our next meeting, with a video of highlights from the group that report to us on an annual basis about their membership activities and how they have gone about their work. Also at our next meeting is a joint one with the Youth Council, so it will already be different, and any thoughts and contributions are welcome, and perhaps if in particular members have experience of online events that have worked well, and I know a number of organisations have been doing that over the last few months, that perhaps we can make contributions in terms of success, suggestions as how we might be able to operate next, the November meeting, November 13th meeting. Can I invite any comments? Any good ideas, suggestions for us? Right, Norma.
Thanks, Elaine. Me again. I wanted to raise under this item on the agenda a report that we have produced in partnership with colleagues in the Scottish Borders, which is now final and is based on 40 interviews with third sector organisations. And it sets out a series of principles and recommended actions for a whole range of organisations, not just third sector. And we think it's quite a significant piece of work. And I wanted to ask if I could bring it to the Community Planning Partnership Board at the next meeting for discussion.
It certainly sounds to me a good idea. I was aware that some work had been done on this, and I think, yeah, it would be useful. It would be useful to have a report on that, particularly if you can have a video of what's been, even with some of the contributors or whatever. Maybe that's rather a tall order to ask to produce, but yeah, it would be worth doing that, I think.
Right.
Any further suggestions? I'm not seeing anybody at the moment. Let me see.
No further requests to speak in the chat, Chair.
No, I'm not seeing anything. So basically we have to agree the board meeting arrangements and programme for November 2020 as set out in 2.4 and in the appendix. So are we content to agree that? We've got a programme of agenda items, and we have, hopefully we're in agreement that the report which Norma referred to just now is also brought to our meeting next in November. Great, lovely, thanks very much. And I don't think that there's anything further, so I just thank everybody for their attendance, both in person. I think there's only one member attending in person, but most of us were attending online. And to thank everybody for their contributions, and please stay safe and well until our next meeting in November. Bye.
Thank you, Elaine. Bye-bye.